This is the E-commerce Braintrust, a podcast about building momentum online for established consumer brands. Join our hosts and their expert guests for high-level conversations about e-commerce strategies, trends, and innovations. Access our Braintrust and boost your brand's e-commerce potential.
Welcome to the E-commerce Braintrust podcast. I'm Julie Spear, Head of Retail Marketplace Services at Acadia, alongside my co-host, Jordan Ripley, Director of Retail Operations. And today we have a friend of the pod, a delightful returning guest, Lauren Livak Gilbert, who is the Executive Director of the Digital Shelf Institute and also a podcast host. She is the co-host of Unpacking the Digital Shelf podcast. Lauren has over 10 years of experience in digital commerce and design, and she is a sought-after commerce strategist for hundreds of global omnichannel brands. Today, she is joining to talk with us about insights from a recent DSI report, Reinventing the Organization for Omnichannel Success, Beyond Where Ecommerce Sits. The report highlights why brands must rethink not just the structure, but the very way that their organizations operate in order to thrive in an omnichannel world. And it also explores the critical mindset shifts leaders need to drive in order to drive profitable growth and build truly future-ready organizations. So with all that, without further ado, Lauren, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I love being on the show with both of you.
Well, we love having you here. It's just a general love fest. So
let's keep that rolling.
Well, let's dig in because this is a meaty report. And I want to start with a line that is at the start of the report that really caught my attention. It said, most brands have treated the symptoms of the evolving commerce world rather than fundamentally shifting the way they work to solve the omnichannel question. Boom.
Mic drop.
This is kind of a hint around what motivated the research, but I would love to hear more about kind of your purpose for this report, how it came to be, what you're hearing from brand leaders. What were the questions that you were looking to answer?
Yeah, thank you, Julie. I feel like this report has been one that I've wanted to write for so long because this is a really hard problem. I mean, even from my brand days, we were trying to figure out, should we live in sales? Should we live in marketing? Should we be in a COE? Like, it's a complicated problem. And it's the number one question that I am asked. I've been wanting to write this report. And I also think as an industry, we're at a huge inflection point. I mean, AI alone is an inflection point in terms of how consumers are going to shop, how we're going to work, how we're going to think about the consumer and their journey. But also just the way that we've all been operating is just fundamentally being disrupted. One of the first things I think about is the pace of change. I mean, think about e-commerce as being different than in-store. If you think about in-store, the planogram changes maybe 2-3 times a year, depending on your category. Well, last year, Amazon changed their requirements 244 times. And Walmart was about the same in terms of the amount of times they changed their requirements. So organizations are not built for that. They're built for in-store shopping. They were built to sell into a Walmart store, sell into a grocery store, and their supply chain and their R&D and their entire infrastructure is built around that. So it's really hard to be able to pivot. And I think the other thing is also we're seeing increased competition. Think about the Kellogg's, the P&G's, the Unilevers of the world. They have like really big name brand products, but their biggest competitor might be a digitally native company that might have started a couple of months ago, right? There's just all of these different changes that are happening, and we can't just add more people to solve it.
Yeah.
So that's really kind of the big change that's happening.
One thing I wonder on this too, it's like, we have, I think, tiptoed around this conversation in maybe 20 different episodes at this point. Or people are like, yeah, it's something we're figuring out. I'm curious if the timing around this was at all informed by like it moved from theoretical to practical. Like we're starting to see orgs actually start to implement these changes. Is that fair to say in terms of like who you've talked to for this report?
Oh, 100%. And you know, the best thing about your research is after you write it, you like see things in the news that like match what you're talking about. So after I wrote this report, there were like 3 or 4 different companies that changed their leadership to be a chief growth officer instead of having like a CMO and a head of sales and marketing report to the chief growth officer. And that's one of the key points in the kind of joint commercial leadership tenet that I talk about in the report. So you're seeing the changes, but I really just want to double click on the fact that you need to start changing now. E-commerce has been around for about 31 years. Think about how long it took for it to become mainstream, and really COVID was the catalyst for that. How fast has AI developed? And how much faster will it be than e-commerce? And a lot of organizations still need to get their data right for just online shopping versus an AI agent coming and creating that shopping experience. So I think the pace of change is really different, and we're seeing more pivots happening now.
Yeah, and that pace of change, obviously exciting, but also daunting. You outline in your report a kind of crawl, walk, run, sprint framework that I think could be helpful for a brand leader to understand how should I be thinking about this and how should I be approaching if they're not on that other side of this. Can you dive a little bit into that model and some of the key principles? So like wherever a brand might be on this journey, they could know where to dive in.
Yeah, and I'm glad you called that out, because I'm not sitting here saying like blow everything up and start from scratch. It's just not possible. I totally get that. In a perfect world, sure, start from scratch, but I know that's not possible. And that's why in the report, you're going to see more of a focus on like the key tenets versus me saying, here's what your org structure should be like. Because no one can say it should be this or that. It really kind of depends on the type of org you are and your level of maturity. And I definitely want to give a shout out to Profitero, who did a really awesome organizational structure report, I think maybe 5 years ago now, and they redo it every year. And they came up with really kind of standard language around the different types of org structures. So they talk about starting with like a sidecar. So you have like 2 or 3 people that are like, yay, e-commerce. We're focusing on it. And then as you become more mature, you probably have like a COE model where they're centralizing the capabilities and they're working with the entire organization. And then
COE being center of excellence.
Thank you.
Yeah, totally.
Yes. I have to channel my inner Scotty Oshman.
This is for the dum-dums pointing at myself that need clarification.
He would be proud with his acronym game.
Yes, he would. Yes, center of excellence as kind of the middle version. And then the third one would be more of an integrated model. So really kind of integrating e-commerce back into the business. And the additional model I've kind of added in this research is something I'm calling the reinvented org model. And the reason for that is because if you integrate something like e-commerce into a structure that's built for in-store, you're just fitting a square peg into a round hole, and you're not fundamentally changing things about the organization that you need to change. If you think about kind of that crawl, walk, run, sprint, crawl is the sidecar, walk is the COE, run is integrated, sprint is really kind of more of that reinvented org model. And there's overlap between them, and you can see that kind of in the report. But what I want to say to everyone here is no matter what stage of maturity you're at, there's things that you can start to do now to set you up for success to be able to get to that reinvented way of the future.
Well, so playing off of that a bit, this goes to another quote from the report that I love. I'm just going to throw out quotes from the report. That's how I'm going to
love it. I know you read it.
Another quote from the report was that e-commerce is a sport. You need to keep training or you get rusty at it. If we stick with that, what's the training regimen? The numbers show everything keeps getting faster. Like you said, the pace. I think we all feel that in the day-to-day. That's why all of us, like, our eyes are twitching here. But 63% of brands admit they don't have an e-commerce education program in place. What do brands need in kind of their e-commerce gym to get e-commerce buff?
Oh, I love this analogy. I'm trying to keep this going.
I've gone too far. I've gone too far now.
I'm like, in my head, I'm like, okay, the weights, the treadmill, the yoga class. Okay.
Yeah. I'm here, Pilates. We got to stretch.
You said it. I mean, education is definitely one of those things. And it's not just a one and done thing. I think that's the struggle, because it takes time and it takes effort, and people need to keep coming back and learning more. But continuous education is really important, because we talked about in-store, right? It's been around for hundreds of years. More people in your organization are probably familiar with in-store than they are with online shopping and just the world of AI. So how are you upskilling them, and how are you educating them, and how are you helping them to understand how their role can be enabled by all of this new technology, and we can help the consumer and we can do so much more for them. So education is a really big piece of it. Change management. Everything we're talking about today and everything in the report, it's change, right? we are human. We don't really like change. That's a general statement, right? Having a change management program to say, hey, here's a forum for you to ask questions. Like, here's why we're doing this. Here's how we're thinking about that. It's really important. And then I think the number one most important, which I guess if I use the analogy is weight training, because you have to have your muscles to be able to do any sport, is cross-functional alignment. If you're not talking to the other functions in your organization, how are you going to have a seamless consumer experience? And how are the shoppers going to know that you're having the same brand, you're telling the same story, and you're really kind of showing up strong? You have to be able to know that supply chain is connected to R&D, which is connected to sales, which is connected to marketing, and not be in that siloed functional model, which is how most organizations are built. So that's a really big change, but there's little things that you can do to really kind of help.
Well, in the first two categories of what's needed there really align with just kind of making it okay, making the change safe and okay for whoever's going through it, whether educating so they understand more and the what's in it for me. And then the change management, really speaking directly to like, here we are changing. This is what it's going to look like, needing to make it safe. Anytime you want someone to come along with you, you do have to invest a lot of time and energy in those areas for sure.
I think we forget sometimes, like we're all humans. We come to work and we want to bring value, and we also want to make our bonuses and get our salary at the end of the year. Like what gets measured gets managed. I say that a lot if anyone's ever listened to me speak. I mean, you just have to remember the human elements of this. And we've been through and are always going to be going through a digital transformation. But I think this is an even bigger transformation because a lot of the traditional brands, some of the older brands that have been around for a long time are realizing if they don't pivot, they're going to be beaten out by these 15, 20 new digitally native brands that started yesterday. There's just this impetus for change that I'm hoping is lighting a fire under people, and they're really rethinking how they're working.
And the education thing specifically, like that seems so fundamentally intertwined with org design, and that it's like, I think traditionally, if you speak to ecom folks, it's like, oh, ecom is my world. I'll do continuing education around that. But the person in finance or the person in sales or the person in marketing may like have no awareness of like what's the newest thing on the ecom horizon. So it's your perspective that you start to break down those walls, and then the education around digital, around ecom becomes something that's baked into every part of the org, essentially.
100%. And I love that you said finance because that's such a great example. I was having a conversation with a CFO the other day, and I was super excited because number one, CFOs never want to talk to me, but and what he was saying is he was like, it took me a long time to understand the language that the marketer was using and translate it to the language that I was using and realize we were saying the same thing differently. So there's also that element of just speaking the same language. That applies for finance, that applies for legal, that applies for IT, supply chain, just being on a common ground, using the same vocabulary and understanding you're all trying to get to the same end goal. It should be ingrained in kind of what you do day to day. Everybody who's in e-commerce knows like the number one part of your job description is to influence and educate. You have to be able to do that throughout the entire organization. But if you leave it to one human or you leave it to a team of 10 people, it will never get ingrained in what you're doing. And that is a big HR piece as well. And I talk about this in the report. If you have an e-commerce team of 10 people, have those 10 people rotate in different functions and start to grassroots share that education and spread it throughout the organization. There's little things that you can do, but it takes time. It's complicated. I can sit here on a podcast and be like, do all these beautiful things, but
here's my checklist.
It's complicated.
Yeah. I liked the practicality of a lot of this in the report, and we'll link the report in the show notes so that folks can check it out. But when the rubber hits the road, you outline kind of 11 different mindset shifts and rank them from an impact first effort, which I liked. It wasn't just like, hey, these are 11 things you have to do. Like your time's precious. Like maybe it's do 3, right? But not saying that they aren't all great, but inevitably we have priorities and limited time. I realize different things will appeal to different people. I'm curious, though, Lauren, from your perspective, if you think about those 11 mindset shifts, are there ones that sort of rise up above of like, if you're going to focus your time initially, by and large, this is an important one to really pay attention to?
Well, first I have to say thank you for recognizing that, because I wrote many iterations of this report. And there was one iteration where I was like, okay, start with these three, then do these three. And I was like, wait. I don't know where you're starting from. I cannot recommend this. And I tried to make it more tangible for people. So pick ones that make sense for you. But if I were to pick a couple that I think are kind of easier to start and also might take a little bit longer, so you should start now. The first one being that kind of call to action to HR. I really think that we might soon have a talent problem in our industry. There's a lot of expertise that's needed, and there's a lot of understanding of not only e-commerce, but also in-store, also rest of business, to be able to be more of an orchestrator and see the end-to-end consumer journey. And if you're not giving people the opportunity to rotate into an e-commerce role or rotate from an e-commerce role into a traditional sales role, then they're not going to get that experience. So I think career planning needs to kind of shift a little bit. And also it needs to be clear, what does the commerce leader of the future look like? And that might be more of a generalist than a specialist. And maybe they don't have to go to 17 different functions and take a demotion or take a lateral move, and they can get experience in other ways. I just think being more creative about career pathing and understanding what that leader of the future looks like, that's something you can start today. That's something you can start now, and it will take time. So that's one. I think the other thing, we're in perfect timing, right? It's planning season. Everybody's talking about joint business planning, strat planning, which is strategic planning. I'm not abbreviating. Long-term planning. This is the time, like September, October is where all the companies are doing that. Trying to show up to your customers and to your consumers, but for this specific example, to your customers as one company. Instead of having a retail media JBP and then a broader business JBP and then an executive JBP, you just have one joint business plan, and you are showing up to insert retailer name, Walmart, Kroger, whoever, as one company. And that needs to apply across all of the places that you're connecting with your retailer, because it just makes sure that you're not promising something that the left hand is not talking to the right hand, and you have a clear and unified strategy. So that's another one that you can kind of start now. I would say those two. And then the third one that I'm just the most passionate about, but I think will take some time, and it definitely has to be an executive decision, is shared goals. If you're not having all of the functions that touch the consumer journey and touch e-commerce metrics the same way, why would you expect them to work together? Make sure that sales, marketing, R&D, retail media, make sure they're all marching towards the same goal. If you have a retail media team that is focused on buying all these or creating all these beautiful ads and putting them on these amazing websites, but you don't even have your product detail pages built out, then that's a major disconnect. And that's a lot of money lost. So just finding areas like that, even making sure that your R&D team is getting insights from your ratings and reviews, and you're making the products that the consumers want. Like there's all those different connection points that you just need to be able to have whether it's a goal and objective, whether it's a metric, insert word that you use at your company for how you're measured, right? Just making sure that everybody's marching towards the same thing.
I have to say, I was wondering if you'd find a way to get your plug for an optimized PDP into this conversation.
Woo-hoo!
And you did find a way. For anyone who's not aware, that's Lauren's favorite. I don't want to say soapbox because I don't want to minimize it. I agree with you on it. But it is your favorite topic.
It's the connective tissue.
Sure is.
Retail media, it's so loud in the industry. And I think a big piece of that is because there's large budget behind it. And listen, it's important. I do believe that it is important. But if you're not connecting it to all of the work that's being done around the digital shelf and around the PDP, then why spend the millions of dollars?
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Mic drop.
Yeah, again with the mic drop.
Perfect. There's one element too that I want to make sure we wrap on is you talk about this reinvention a lot, Lauren, in the report, and starting from the solution and sort of working backwards. If we leave our listeners here with painting the picture of paradise, if you've weighed all of these tactics, assessed impact versus effort, what's going to fit best within your organization and your level of maturity? I'm wondering, like, what are those key outcomes that you should see after you go through this process to know, like, yeah, this was a successful experience, my reinvention. Not that you'll ever get to this perfect state, but like paint the picture of what this could look like for those that are weighing this project.
Jordan, I'm really glad you said that you're never going to reach that. Because I think that's a mindset. But that's a mindset shift. Like, there's never going to be a point where you're going to be like, okay, no more change. We just don't live in that world. But we did in the past. That is another really big mindset shift. It's not like you're just getting to this peak of the mountain and you can put your flag in and be like, we're done. It's always going to continuously evolve, but that takes a mindset shift. It takes a process shift. It takes a lot of different changes. So just getting comfortable with that is the first. I would say, what does success look like? Like if I were to paint a picture of what a profitable omni-channel reinvented org looks like, it would be an organization that can pivot quickly, can make decisions without friction, thinks about the consumer first and makes decisions for the consumer, and also someone who kind of connects the dots between all of the different campaigns, all of the different projects, and they all have a purpose versus just kind of doing it one-off because we've done it in the past. Those are the ways I would kind of think about what the beautiful paradise, as you say, kind of would look like. It's really like agile decision-making, one unified strategy, cross-functional alignment, being able to pivot quickly.
Mm-hmm. Which sort of speaks to like, this should probably roll up to somebody not traditional. Like, you know, if someone is measuring, like head of sales is like, oh yeah, sales great this year. And we're gonna, it's like, you're going to have a tough road to hoe here.
Well, that's one of the key tenets is having joint commercial leadership. And that can be named many different things. Like in the report, I talk about a chief growth officer or chief commercial officer. And that means that one person has sales and marketing underneath them. So they see the broader umbrella. Traditionally, organizations have sales and then they have marketing and then they have supply chain, right? You're creating this siloed function, which is automatically pinning each other against each other inside the org. So if you have that chief growth officer, chief commercial officer, I'm sure there's a lot of names for it, they own both sales and marketing, then you're all working together towards the same goal. And that's one of those things that takes time. I've seen a lot of organizations recently, like I said, kind of create a chief growth officer and focus more on that. But I think it's always an evolution. We saw that there were chief digital officers and now they're kind of going away. But that's because you need to have this kind of capability. You need to bring someone in who focuses on it, and then it probably goes back into the business. And I think that's the same for like, you're probably going to see some chief AI officers. Mm-hmm. I don't think that role is going to be around in the next 5 years, right? Like you build it, they get it ingrained in the org, they build in these processes, and then it gets more integrated into everything that's happening now.
I think one of the things or two of the things I heard you say multiple times in our conversation, start now, don't wait, but also it takes time. There's some urgency and some grace.
Yes. Well said, Julie. Well said. A lot of the things we talk about, and every time, if anyone's ever heard me say it, like the fundamental things are really the important things, right? You still need to get your data right. You need your people talking to each other. You need to have the right metrics. Like these aren't new and novel ideas. It's just getting them to work correctly and making sure you're all moving at the same pace in the same direction. So if you start now and you start small, then by the time all of these things come together, you'll be ready.
There you go. Well, once again, you've shared with us some careful, thoughtful research that's just meant to help us continue moving forward. So thank you for the work that you did on this report and for coming on to talk about it. As Jordan said, we'll link it in the show notes, and I am sure we will have you back again with another new research report down the road.
I love it. Thank you both so much for having me and for all of your thoughtful questions.